Good afternoon, everyone. Good day. I am Mr. Shane Prahanog, and I will be tackling to you today the Japanese occupation of Morolands and its aftermath. Here are our objectives. First, what was the condition of Moroland during the Japanese occupation? What were the people's reactions to the Japanese occupation, and what was the impact of Japanese occupation on Moroland and its people? Going back in 1941, the existence of the Commonwealth government would be interrupted by the outbreak of World War II. President Quezon and the other key officials of the Commonwealth government would have to leave the Philippines for Australia and eventually for the United States. President Manuel Quezon had to leave the Philippines due to this Japanese invasion. With the threat of Japanese occupation looming, Quezon evacuated to Australia and eventually the United States. This move allowed him to continue serving as the President of the Philippines during representing the country internationally, while a Japanese-sponsored republic was set up in the Philippines headed by Jose P. Laurel. If Quezon did not leave, he would have been captured and executed by the Japanese. Forced collaboration with Japan, or the Philippines will lost international recognition. Now, Quezon would continue serving as president of the de jure government while Japanese-sponsored republic was being set up by headed by President Jose P. Laurel. It must be recalled that the Japanese aim in World War II was to build an empire and expand into Asia. Japanese motivation for this Asian expansion was expressed in the slogan, "Asia for the Asians." Such slogan was actually generated by the observation that Asian countries were being colonized by various Western colonizers. Therefore, in the Japanese perspective, it would be better to expel the Westerners and liberate Asian from Western domination. Japan, in other words, saw herself as a leader of a self-proclaimed mandate of Asian liberation. In the process, Japanese would find themselves invading various Asian countries and struggling to expel Westerners and to place themselves as the Asian colonizers of the various Asian countries. So, let's go back with President Jose P. Laurel. He was involved because he willingly served under Japanese military administration because he was already known to them as a critic of U.S. rule in the Philippines. He also admired fascist ideologies and saw the Japan's Asia for Asians slogan as aligning with his own nationalist views. Now, what was the condition of Moroland during the Japanese occupation? In Moroland, World War II would start with the Japanese invasion of Davao and Jolo in December 1941. And then 4 months later, during April 1942, Cotabato and Lanao would also be invaded. The occupation of these places were meant to provide air bases for the eventual thrust and penetration of the Japanese forces into Borneo and Celebes. The mentioned places were obviously found in Mindanao. Therefore, Mindanao then became an air base. So, ang mga airplanes, weapons na adinhin sa Mindanao nila girest ang ilahang mga, so dahil mo siyang airbase tanang mga military weapons, tanan nga mga sabana, kung naa sila canyons, na sila mga jet planes na dinhi sa ato ang lugar sa Mindanao. Next, what was the condition of Moroland during the Japanese occupation? The Japanese could have turned the tables in their favor as they had studied and understood the situation of the Moros and Lumads of Mindanao and Sulu. They could have exploited Moro dissatisfaction with the Commonwealth government and the discriminatory laws implemented to win the loyalty and cooperation to the Japanese side. So the Japanese wanted to attract the attention of Moros because they knew that the Moros were dissatisfied with the Commonwealth government. The Japanese simply used it as a weapon to win the loyalty of the Moros. But they had no idea about the existing situation. Instead, the Japanese simply treated the Moros in the same way that they treated most native people that they have invaded, which was perhaps the most or worse than the way the new Commonwealth colonizers treated them. So, next. So Peter Going says, the Japanese occupation forces little understood the actual situation of the Moros in the Philippine nation, and also failed to take advantage of Moro disaffection. So wala nila nakuha ang attention sa mga Moros, no? Instead, they treated the Moros much the same as the rest of the Philippine population. So kung sa ilahang treatment sa lain nga mga Filipinos, mao pud ay ilahang pagtrato sa mga Moros. Their invasion and early occupation were accompanied by brutality and terrorism, designed to cow the population into obedience if not the fastest possible time. So their invasion was accompanied by brutality and terrorism daw. So gihimo ni nila, they were brutal kay para kuno bitaw kanang para himuon bitang isna kanang coward ang mga Filipinos, para lang jud nga mapasunod nila ang mga Filipinos. So muna siya nga brutal ang mga Japanese. So any bad memories the Moros had of American or Christian Filipino behavior were offset by the harsh behavior of the Japanese, who thereby unnecessarily alienated a people who might have been persuaded to look upon them as liberators. So dili jud day sa ang pag-abot sa mga Japanese dire, there are two-faced people. They are two-faced people. Balik ka ng sa laba ka ng kumbaga unang meet pa lang nimo sa ilaha kay abi nimo og maayo sila, but behind the mask they have kanang brutal intentions para lang jud mailaha ang Philippines, mahimo siyang part sa para ma-invade nila ang Philippines. Okay. The Japanese occupation was infamous for overacted martial cruelty and ruthlessness by Japanese invading forces. On the other hand, however, the Japanese advent was somewhat a blessing in disguise. So, a blessing in disguise because it welded Muslim-Christian cooperation and unity. So, despite the harsh treatment, ang cruelties nga gipakita sa mga Japanese tungod ato, nahimo nga bond between the Muslim and the Christians. This was illustrated in the fact that Moros eagerly served the United States Army Forces in the Far East, or the USAF, in which they offered as much resistance as they could under the circumstance of an overpowering enemy or slot. So magayat na no so the Moros thought nga kung the Moros thought nga mas maayo nga mukampi sila sa Americans, nga less ang kanang dili maayo nga pag-treat nila sa mga Moros, or mapatay sila sa mga Japanese. So duhara ilahang choice. So niadto sila dito sa choice nga mukampi sila sa United States Army. And when guerrilla units were organized after General Wainwright ordered the surrender of the USAF, the Moros willingly joined these units. These units were composed of Muslims and Christians volunteers na dayon. Okay. Peter Going again notes that in Cotabato, guerrilla forces were organized by Dato Salipada Pendatun and his brother-in-law Dato Udtog Matalam. So they were made up of both Muslim and Christians and controlled the vast interior parts of the province. As in Cotabato, the Lanao guerrillas were also both Muslims and Christians. The same was also true in Sulu. Disregarding the ill feelings in the past, kay, diba, way back sa katong pag-abot pa lang sa mga Spaniards, kay some of the people in the Philippines kay na Christianize. So ang mga Moros kay na marag nang nalain sila. There were part feelings nga nalain sila kay kanang nadala ang ubang Filipino sa Spaniards. So moto siya ang ill feelings nga naa karon sa ato ang topic, pero they disregarded it para lang jud nga madepensahan nila ang Philippines to defend other Filipinos. Moros and Christians in the islands joined hands in the resistance movements against the Japanese, diba? In fact, Colonel Alejandro Suarez, a Christian, assumed command on the 125th Infantry Regiment of the guerrilla forces in Sulu, whose elements were made up of Muslims and Christians too. Well, actually, the Japanese occupation of Morolands was limited to the coastal towns. Their troops had few interior garrisons scattered along the highways. So wala kayo sila dito sa mga dapit na sa coast, dapit na sa baybay. Wala sila dito. So ilahang kampo kay naragid along the highways. The guerrillas controlled the vast interior of Mindanao and outlying islands, especially in Tawi-Tawi, Cotabato, and Lanao. In fact, in Lanao, there was the Free Lanao Civil Government, which exercised greater authority over more people and territory than did the Japanese-controlled government. So, grabe ang ilahang security. In Sulu, the guerrillas also set up a rudimentary government that provided supplies and printed emergency money, except the garrison town of Holo. The island's interior and many island in Tawi-Tawi were under the effective control of the Sulu guerrillas. So ang Sulu guerrillas kay grabe ang ilahang power din ha. Kanang dili sila basta-basta ma-invade bitaw sa enemy. The strong Sulu resistance had made the Japanese unable to move freely beyond its garrisons in strategic sites, not only because they were unfamiliar with the terrain but also because the guerrillas continued to attack in retaliation. So aside from taking uphold their camps, kay kuan po sila kanang ilaha pong ginaatake po nila ang mga Japanese. So the Japanese bombed Tamparan is a place, and the surrounding areas for 26 straight days. So ingon ana ka kusog ang Sulu guerrillas. While the guerrilla movement appeared successful, they were not without sufferings and difficulties in their struggle against the Japanese. So dili man gud jud dalim. Although successful, pero ang ilahang giagian kay dili jud dalim. In Sulu, for instance, oral traditions known as kisa describes the extreme sufferings of the Sulu fighters. A unit of the guerrilla forces to be known as tapikans because in one instance, they were continually pursued by the Japanese. Driven into inhospitable jungles of Tawi-Tawi, they were reduced to eating anything edible. They forced to eat a bitter fruit known as tapikan, from which they got their name, and even wild boar. So wild boar, grabe. Maski as pork is taboo in Islam, no, tabo ka ng bawal man dyan na sa Islam ang pork, pero just to survive they have to consume even the even ang mga ginabawal sa ilahang religion. They justified that eating pork by they justified their eating pork by saying that they had to do it or they would starve to death. Allah would surely understand. So muto ang nahitabo, no, beyond the success kay dili ba kanang dili pod sayon ang ilahang kaagian para lang makasurvive sila sa kaninga war. So they have to eat pork maskin dili pwede sa ilaha para lang jud mo survive. So ingon ana ang ato ang mga ancestors sa una. Grabe ang ilahang pag-strive para lang jud nga ma-conquer ang unsay na anato karon, which is the freedom against the colonizers. So that's all. I guess that's all. Okay, that's all. This will be continued with Mr. Ivan Liberto and Jolimar Lanot. So that's all. Thank you for watching and God bless.